The notification sound pierces through my bedroom silence like a knife through silk, and I already know what it says before I even look at my phone because I've lived this moment before, died from the heartbreak it caused, and somehow opened my eyes 3 days ago back in my 17-year-old body with all the devastating knowledge of what Jake Morrison truly thinks of me burning in my chest like acid. Sorry, Maya, something came up. Can't make prom. You understand, right? In my past life, I stared at that text message for 47 minutes, while my custom Valentino gown hung on my closet door like a beautiful ghost, while my mother's vintage Cartier earrings waited on my vanity, while my heart shattered into a million pieces that I would spend the next year trying to reassemble, only to have Jake destroy me completely when I discovered he'd been using my family's connections to launch his modeling career while telling everyone at NYU that I was just some spoiled rich girl who threw herself at him. But that was before the car accident on the FDR drive. Before I died, knowing that Jake Morrison had played me like a violin from the very first day he smiled at me in advanced economics. Before I woke up in this same bedroom with tears on my cheeks and the taste of betrayal still bitter in my mouth, 3 days before prom with a second chance I never thought I'd get. This time, I don't stare at the message until my vision blurs. This time, I don't call Sophia crying so hard I can barely breathe. This time, I pick up my phone with steady fingers and type back exactly 4 words that would have been impossible for the old Maya to manage. Of course, have fun. Then I block his number and start planning my revenge. You see, when you die and come back to life, you realize that all those romance novels got it wrong about second chances. They're not about fixing your mistakes or winning back the boy who broke your heart. They're about showing everyone exactly who you really are when you stop trying to be what they want you to be, and Jake Morrison is about to learn that Maya Chen doesn't need him to shine. I walk to my floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Central Park and watch the late afternoon sun paint the trees gold while my mind races through possibilities. Because in my past life, I stayed home on prom night eating ice cream and watching movies while Jake took Brianna Walsh in the dress he'd helped me pick out. While he used my family's private box at Lincoln Center that I'd promised him for after prom. While he started the networking that would eventually lead to his Versace campaign and his complete destruction of my heart and my family's reputation. But I remember something else from my past life, something I'd forgotten in all the pain and humiliation. 2 months ago at the Metropolitan Museum's annual charity gala, I'd met Dante Rossi, the Italian supermodel who graced the cover of Vogue and walked for every major fashion house from Milan to Paris. And when I'd mentioned attending Westfield Academy, he'd laughed and said he'd always wondered what American high school was really like, how he'd love to experience something so authentically American as a school dance. In my past life, I'd been too starstruck to do anything with that conversation except stammer and blush. But now, with the clarity that comes from having your heart ripped out and your family's name dragged through the tabloids, I can see the opportunity that was right in front of me all along. I grab my phone and scroll through my contacts until I find the number I'd entered but never had the courage to use. Dante's manager, Alessandro Marchetti, who'd given me his card and told me to call if I ever wanted to collaborate on something interesting for charity. My hands don't shake as I dial because dead girls don't get nervous about phone calls. And when Alessandro's familiar accented voice answers, I don't stutter the way I would have 3 months ago. Alessandro, this is Maya Chen from the Met Gala, I say, and my voice sounds different even to my own ears, stronger and clearer and completely sure of itself. I have an interesting proposition for Dante. 20 minutes later, I'm staring at my phone in amazement because Dante Rossi has just agreed to be my date to prom, not as a publicity stunt or a charity obligation, but because he genuinely remembers our conversation and finds the idea charming and authentic, which are apparently two things that international supermodels don't encounter very often in their daily lives. He wants to experience real American culture, Alessandro had explained while I could hear Dante laughing in the background and saying something in rapid Italian. He's been working nonstop for 3 years, and he says a high school prom sounds like the most fun he's had in ages. We'll handle all the logistics, security, transportation, media management if needed. He just asks that you show him how to be a proper American teenager for one night. And just like that, my humiliation transforms into the kind of social coup that legends are made of. The kind of story that will follow Jake Morrison for the rest of his miserable life as the boy who was too stupid to appreciate Maya Chen. I spend the rest of the evening completely reimagining my prom look, because when you're walking in with Dante Rossi, your outfit needs to be worthy of international attention. The Valentino is beautiful but too safe. Too much like the girl who would wait 47 minutes for a text back from a boy who never deserved her attention in the first place. Instead, I choose the midnight blue Ely Saab gown I'd originally dismissed as too dramatic. The one with intricate beadwork that catches light like stars and a silhouette that makes me look like I stepped off a red carpet. Because that's exactly what I'm planning to do. I swap my mother's vintage Cartier for contemporary Bulgari pieces that photograph better under flash. And I book an appointment with the makeup artist who works with celebrities, not the sweet local woman who usually does our family events. When Sophia calls that night, her voice bubbling with excitement about tomorrow's final dress fittings and nail appointments, I almost feel guilty for the bomb I'm about to drop on our entire social circle. Sophia, I say, interrupting her detailed analysis of her date's corsage choice. I need to tell you something important. Jake canceled on me. The silence on the other end of the line stretches so long, I wonder if the call dropped. And then Sophia unleashes a string of profanity that would make our European history teacher faint. That absolute waste of oxygen, she finally manages. Maya, I'm so sorry. Do you want me to cancel with Marcus and we can have a girls' night instead? We could go to that new rooftop restaurant. Or we could... Actually, I interrupt, and I can't keep the smile out of my voice. I already made other arrangements. Other arrangements? Maya, it's less than 24 hours before prom. Who could you possibly... Dante Rossi. Another silence, longer this time. And then Sophia screams so loudly I have to pull the phone away from my ear. Dante Rossi? As in Italian sex god supermodel Dante Rossi? As in the man who made me question my relationship with Marcus just by existing Dante Rossi? Maya Chen, you did not just tell me that Dante Rossi is taking you to prom. I just told you that Dante Rossi is taking me to prom. How? When? Why, what? Maya, I'm having an actual heart attack. How do you even know Dante Rossi? I explain about the Met Gala while Sophia makes increasingly incoherent noises of amazement. And by the time I finish the story, she's crying actual tears of joy. Maya, this is the most iconic thing that has ever happened to anyone in the history of Westfield Academy. Jake Morrison is going to die when he sees you walk in with literal perfection in a tuxedo. I'm so proud of you for not letting that loser ruin your night. But as I hang up and stare at my reflection in my bedroom mirror, I realize that this isn't really about Jake anymore. Not the way it was in my past life, when every decision I made was filtered through the lens of his approval or disapproval. This is about Maya Chen finally becoming the person she was always meant to be, the person who doesn't need anyone else's validation to know her own worth. When I wake up on prom morning, sunlight streaming through my windows and my phone already buzzing with messages from classmates who've apparently heard rumors about my mystery date, I feel calmer than I have since the day I died. There's something clarifying about having lived through the worst possible version of events. Something freeing about knowing that nothing that happens today can hurt me the way I've already been hurt. I spend the morning at the spa with my mother, who seems delighted by this turn of events, even though I haven't told her exactly who my date is. Just that he's someone I met at a charity event, and that he's flying in specifically for prom. You seem different, sweetheart, she says as we sit side by side getting our nails done. And when I look at her in the mirror, her expression is proud and a little surprised. More confident. More yourself. I decided to stop trying to be what other people want me to be, I tell her. And it's the truest thing I've said in either lifetime. The manicurist finishes painting my nails a shade called Midnight in Moscow that matches my dress perfectly, and I watch the color dry while mentally reviewing the timeline Alessandro sent me last night. Dante's flight lands at 3. I pick him up at 4. We arrive at school at 7:30 for photos. Prom officially starts at 8. By the time we leave the spa, my phone has 17 missed calls from various classmates and 43 text messages ranging from polite curiosity to barely concealed desperation for information. The rumors have apparently escalated from Maya has a mystery date to Maya's date is someone famous to Maya's date is definitely that actor from the vampire movies. I ignore all of them except Sophia, who texts, I've been fielding questions about you all morning, and I'm enjoying every second. Jake looks like he swallowed a lemon every time someone mentions your mysterious celebrity date. At 3:45, I'm sitting in the back of our family's Mercedes, driven by Henri, who's worked for us for 10 years and never asks questions, pulling up to the private aviation terminal at Teterboro. My heart is beating faster than I want to admit because meeting Dante at a charity gala surrounded by hundreds of people is very different from picking him up alone for what's essentially a date, even if it's not technically a real date. But when I see him walking down the steps of his private jet, talking animatedly on his phone in Italian while wearing perfectly fitted jeans and a white button down that probably costs more than most people's cars, all my nervousness evaporates because he looks genuinely happy to be here. Not like he's doing me a favor or fulfilling some obligation. He spots me immediately and his face breaks into the kind of smile that's made photographers fight over him for the past 5 years. But when he approaches the car, there's nothing calculated or performative about his greeting. Maya, he says, and his English is perfect with just enough accent to make my name sound like poetry. I cannot tell you how excited I am for this adventure. I've been thinking about it all week. He slides into the back seat beside me and immediately starts asking questions about the school, about prom traditions, about whether he should know how to dance to specific songs. And I realize that this is actually fun in a way that none of my interactions with Jake ever were, because Dante is genuinely interested in learning about my world instead of figuring out how to use it for his own purposes. In Italy, we don't have anything like this, he explains as Henri navigates through late afternoon Manhattan traffic. The closest equivalent would be a debutante ball, but that's very formal, very stuffy. This sounds much more authentic, more about celebrating with your friends. It can be, I say, thinking about all the prom planning drama and social politics I've watched play out over the past month. Though it's also an excuse for teenagers to spend ridiculous amounts of money trying to impress each other. Dante laughs, and it's a real laugh, not the polished version I've seen in interviews. So exactly like Fashion Week, but with less cocaine and more parental supervision. By the time we reach my apartment building, I'm completely relaxed in a way I never was with Jake, who always made me feel like I was being tested on material I hadn't studied. Dante follows me upstairs to meet my parents, and I watch my mother's face transform from polite curiosity to starstruck amazement when she realizes exactly who she's shaking hands with. Mrs. Chen, your daughter has been the perfect hostess, Dante says, kissing her hand in a gesture that would seem ridiculous from anyone else, but looks completely natural when he does it. I hope you don't mind me stealing her for the evening. My father, who normally interrogates my dates like he's conducting a corporate merger negotiation, simply nods and says, "Take care of our girl," which tells me everything I need to know about Dante's natural charm. While Dante changes into his tuxedo in the guest room, I put the finishing touches on my look. And when I see myself in the full-length mirror, I barely recognize the girl staring back at me. She looks sophisticated and confident and completely comfortable in her own skin. Nothing like the anxious, people-pleasing version of myself who died in that car accident. When Dante emerges from the guest room, we both stop and stare at each other for a moment that stretches longer than it probably should. He looks like he stepped off the cover of GQ, but more than that, he looks like he belongs here, like this isn't just a costume he's wearing for my benefit. "You look incredible," he says finally, and the way he says it makes me believe it's true. "So do you," I reply. And then we're both laughing because the whole situation is slightly surreal and completely perfect. My mother insists on taking approximately 50 photos before we leave, and then Henri is driving us toward Westfield Academy, while Dante peppers me with last-minute questions about prom etiquette, and I try not to think about the fact that we're about to walk into what will undoubtedly be the most talked-about entrance in the school's history. But when we pull up to the school and I see the red carpet that the prom committee has rolled out, when I see the professional photographers that someone must have called, when I see the crowd of students and parents and even some local media gathered around the entrance, my confidence doesn't waver the way it would have in my past life. Instead, I feel a surge of pure satisfaction because Jake Morrison is standing near the entrance with Brianna Walsh looking uncomfortable in a dress that's trying too hard, and when he sees our car pull up, his face goes through about 17 different emotions before settling on something that looks like he's been punched in the stomach. "Ready?" Dante asks, and when I look at him, his expression is warm and encouraging, and completely free of the kind of calculation I always saw in Jake's eyes. Ready, I say, and I mean it. Henri opens our door and Dante steps out first, extending his hand to help me from the car, and the reaction from the crowd is immediate and electric. Someone screams, someone else drops their phone, and I hear at least 3 people frantically calling friends to tell them what's happening. But all I can focus on is the way Dante's hand feels in mine, steady and warm and completely confident, as we walk up the red carpet together while cameras flash and people shout questions and Jake Morrison watches his entire universe implode from 20 feet away. Smile and wave, Dante murmurs in my ear, and his voice is amused rather than stressed, like he's enjoying this as much as I am. Show them what a real queen looks like. So I do. I smile and wave and pose for pictures with the kind of natural grace I never knew I possessed. And when Mrs. Henderson, our principal, approaches with barely concealed panic about managing the media attention, Dante smoothly steps in to handle the situation with the kind of professional charm that comes from years of red carpet experience. We're just here to enjoy prom like any other couple, he tells her with a smile that could melt glaciers. Maya promised to show me authentic American teenage culture, and I'm very much looking forward to it. Inside the gymnasium, which has been transformed with twinkling lights and silver decorations into something that actually looks magical, the reaction to our entrance is even more dramatic. Conversations stop mid-sentence, phones appear immediately, and I watch my classmates' expressions range from shock to envy to pure amazement. But the best reaction comes from Jake, who's standing by the punch bowl looking like someone told him Christmas was canceled forever. He's staring at us with the kind of desperate confusion that comes from realizing you've made a catastrophic mistake, and when he starts walking in our direction, I feel Dante's hand tighten protectively on my waist. Maya, Jake says when he reaches us, and his voice sounds strained and artificial compared to Dante's natural warmth. You look... Wow, I didn't expect to see you here. Why wouldn't I be here? I ask with the kind of innocent confusion that I perfected during my mother's charity board meetings. It's prom. I thought, after what happened, I tried to call you today, but your number... Oh, I changed my number, I say casually, like it's the most natural thing in the world. Fresh start, you know? Jake, this is Dante Rossi. Dante, this is Jake Morrison, a classmate of mine. Dante extends his hand with perfect politeness, but I can see the subtle way he positions himself slightly in front of me. And when Jake takes his hand, the handshake lasts just long enough to establish exactly who's in control of this conversation. Nice to meet you, Dante says with a smile that doesn't reach his eyes. Maya's told me so much about her friends here. The lie is perfect because it implies that I've mentioned Jake without suggesting he's important enough to remember details about, and I watch Jake's face process this information with the kind of dawning horror that makes my heart sing with satisfaction. So, you two are... Jake starts, and the desperation in his voice is music to my ears. Having a wonderful evening, I interrupt smoothly. Dante's never been to an American prom before. I promise to show him all the traditions. Like dancing, Dante adds, and before Jake can respond, Dante's leading me onto the dance floor where Perfect by Ed Sheeran is playing and half the school is already swaying together under the twinkling lights. Dancing with Dante is nothing like dancing with Jake, who always made it feel like he was doing me a favor by tolerating my presence. Dante moves like music was invented for him, confident and graceful and completely focused on making sure I'm comfortable. And when he spins me around, I catch glimpses of my classmates watching us with expressions ranging from awe to envy. You're handling this beautifully, he murmurs as we sway together, and his voice is warm with genuine admiration. I can see why that boy is so desperate to get your attention back. He had his chance, I say, and the certainty in my voice surprises even me. I'm not interested in second chances for people who don't appreciate what they have the first time. Dante's smile is proud and a little amazed, spoken like a true queen. As the song ends and transitions into something more upbeat, I notice that we've become the center of attention in the best possible way, with other couples clearing space for us and several people openly recording our dancing. But more importantly, I notice that Jake has spent the entire song standing at the edge of the dance floor watching us, with Brianna looking increasingly annoyed beside him. Maya, a voice says behind me, and I turn to see Marcus Williams, Sophia's date, approaching with Sophia practically glowing with excitement beside him. Sophia wanted me to ask if you'd introduce her to your friend. Of course, I say. And the introductions that follow are a masterclass in social grace, as Dante charms my friends without overshadowing anyone, asking genuine questions about their college plans and complimenting Sophia's dress with the kind of specific fashion knowledge that makes her practically levitate with joy. Your friends are lovely, Dante tells me later as we grab some punch, and I can tell he means it. Very genuine, very welcoming. Not at all what I expected from American teenagers. What did you expect? More like him, Dante says with a subtle nod toward Jake, who's been hovering at the edges of our conversations all evening like a moth drawn to flame. Artificial, trying too hard to impress. You can always tell when someone wants something from you. The accuracy of his assessment hits me like a physical blow, because that's exactly what Jake had been doing from the very beginning, wanting something from me, calculating how to get it, never simply enjoying my company for its own sake. As if summoned by our conversation, Jake appears beside us again, this time without Brianna, looking increasingly desperate and disheveled, despite his perfectly tailored tuxedo. Maya, can I talk to you privately for a minute? He asks, and there's something frantic in his voice that makes several nearby conversations pause. Actually, Dante says before I can respond, his voice still perfectly polite but with an edge that wasn't there before. I was just about to ask Maya to dance again. The DJ promised to play something slow. But I find myself curious about what Jake could possibly want to say that would make him abandon his date and risk public humiliation, so I place a gentle hand on Dante's arm and give him a look that I hope conveys my appreciation for his protection, while also asking for his trust. It's okay, I tell him. Give me 5 minutes. Dante's expression is reluctant but understanding. I'll be right here, he says, and the promise in his voice makes my chest warm in a way that has nothing to do with revenge and everything to do with feeling genuinely cared for. Jake leads me to a slightly quieter corner near the emergency exit, and as soon as we're out of Dante's direct line of sight, his entire demeanor changes from desperate to angry. What the hell is this, Maya? He hisses, and his voice is ugly in a way I never heard in my past life, probably because I never had the power to make him truly furious before. You think you can just show up here with some pretty boy model and make me look like an idiot? The question is so absurd that I actually laugh, which makes his face turn red in a way that's genuinely concerning. Jake, you made yourself look like an idiot when you canceled on me 24 hours before prom via text message. I just decided not to let your poor planning ruin my evening. Poor planning? Maya, I had a family emergency. Your mom is fine, I interrupt, and the certainty in my voice stops him cold. She's working the late shift at St. Mary's Hospital just like she does every weekend. There was no emergency, Jake. You canceled because you thought you could do better than me, and now you're angry because you realized you were wrong. The silence that follows is the kind of silence that feels dangerous, and when Jake finally speaks, his voice is low and vicious in a way that makes me understand why I never stood a chance against him in my past life. You think you're so much better than everyone else, don't you? He says, and his smile is ugly and mean. Just because your daddy bought you a fancy dress and a pretty date, you think you can humiliate me in front of the entire school? I think, I say, and my voice is steady and clear and completely unafraid, that you humiliated yourself. I just chose not to let your choices affect my happiness. Your happiness? Jake laughs, and it's a sound like breaking glass. Maya, you're a spoiled little rich girl who's never had to work for anything in her entire life. You think that model actually cares about you? You think he's here because he likes you? He's here because your family probably paid him enough to buy a house. In my past life, those words would have destroyed me, would have planted seeds of doubt that grew into the insecurity that eventually killed me. But now, having spent the entire evening watching Dante treat everyone around him with genuine kindness and respect, having seen the way he lights up when he talks about things he's passionate about, having felt the warmth in his voice when he calls me remarkable, I can see Jake's words for what they are. The desperate cruelty of someone who's lost something valuable and wants to make sure no one else can have it either. You know what, Jake? I say, and my voice is almost pitying. I'm sorry for you. I'm sorry that you're so miserable in your own life that you can't imagine anyone being genuinely happy. I'm sorry that you're so insecure that another person's success feels like a personal attack. And I'm especially sorry that you wasted so much energy hating people who never did anything to you except exist in a world you wanted to be part of. Jake's face goes through several expressions before settling on something that looks like pure hatred. And when he speaks, his voice is quiet and venomous. Enjoy your little fairy tale, Maya, but don't come crying to me when Prince Charming goes back to his real life and leaves you behind like the boring little nobody you actually are. He walks away before I can respond, but as I watch him cross the gymnasium floor back to Brianna, who looks like she's questioning every life choice that led her to this moment, I realize that his words don't hurt me the way they would have before because they're not true anymore. I'm not a boring little nobody. I'm Maya Chen, and I'm remarkable enough that Dante Rossi flew across an ocean just to spend an evening with me. And whether that leads to something more or ends tonight, it doesn't change the fact that I'm finally becoming the person I was always meant to be. When I return to Dante, he takes one look at my face and immediately steps closer, his expression concerned and protective. Everything all right? He asks, and the genuine worry in his voice makes my chest tight with emotion. Everything's perfect, I tell him, and for the first time in either of my lives, I actually mean it. The rest of prom passes in a blur of dancing and laughter and moments that feel like they're happening to someone else. Someone braver and more confident than the girl who died heartbroken and alone in a car accident 6 months from now in another timeline. When they announce prom, king and queen, I'm genuinely shocked to hear my name called, though Dante just grins and says he saw it coming from across the room. They love you, he tells me as I stand on the small stage wearing a rhinestone tiara that probably cost less than my shoes, looking out at my classmates who are cheering and taking pictures and treating me like I'm someone worth celebrating. And why wouldn't they? You're extraordinary. The word hits me like a lightning bolt because it's exactly the opposite of everything Jake spent our entire relationship making me believe about myself. And when I look at Dante standing in the crowd with his hands clasped behind his back and pride written all over his face, I realize that somewhere between the red carpet and the dance floor, this stopped being about revenge and started being about something else entirely. After the crowning ceremony, we escape to the school's garden for some air, and the spring night is perfect and cool and full of possibilities that didn't exist this morning. Thank you, I tell him as we sit on a stone bench surrounded by flowering trees, and my voice comes out softer than I intended. For tonight, for everything. I know this isn't exactly how international supermodels usually spend their Saturday nights. Dante turns to look at me, and in the moonlight, his expression is serious and thoughtful and completely different from the charming public face he's worn all evening. Maya, he says, and my name sounds different in his voice, more intimate somehow. I need you to know that this wasn't charity for me. This wasn't a favor or a publicity stunt or anything other than exactly what it appeared to be. A beautiful girl asking me to be her date to an important event. But you barely know me, I protest, because even with all my newfound confidence, the idea that someone like Dante could be genuinely interested in someone like me still feels too good to be true. I know enough, he says simply. I know that you're kind to service staff and generous with your friends and gracious under pressure. I know that you ask thoughtful questions and listen to the answers and never make anyone feel small or unimportant. I know that you carry yourself like a queen, but treat everyone around you like they matter. And I know that whatever that boy said to you earlier hurt you, but you didn't let it change who you are or how you treat other people. Each word hits me like a small miracle because they're all things that Jake never saw or never cared enough to acknowledge. And I realize that I've spent so much time trying to be worthy of love that I forgot to notice when someone was already offering it. Dante, I start, but he shakes his head with a smile that's soft and a little shy, so different from his professional confidence that it takes my breath away. I fly back to Milan tomorrow for a Versace shoot, but I'll be in New York again next month for Fashion Week. Would you like to have dinner? Somewhere quiet where we can actually talk without cameras and crowds and teenage drama? The question is simple, but it feels like he's offering me the world, and when I say yes, his smile is bright enough to power the entire city. Later, after Dante has charmed my parents over late-night coffee and promised to call me tomorrow after Henry has driven him back to his hotel, and I'm finally alone in my bedroom, still wearing my prom dress and rhinestone tiara, I sit at my vanity, removing my makeup and thinking about the strange miracle of second chances. In my past life, this night ended with me crying into a pint of ice cream while Jake posted Instagram stories from his after party with Brianna, while I planned my future around a boy who was already planning his exit strategy. But tonight ends with my phone full of messages from classmates saying it was the best prom in school history, with Dante's number saved in my contacts next to a heart emoji, with the absolute certainty that Maya Chen doesn't need anyone else's validation to know her own worth. 6 months later, I'm standing in the Fashion Week tent in Bryant Park watching Dante walk for Tom Ford while wearing the engagement ring he gave me last week at the same charity gala where we first met. And when he finds me in the crowd and winks, I think about how different life looks when you stop trying to force the wrong people to love you and start recognizing the right people who already do. Jake Morrison is working as a social media coordinator for a boutique fitness studio in Brooklyn and dating a girl who doesn't know that he used to dream of red carpets and magazine covers. Brianna Walsh is a sophomore at Barnard studying pre-law and occasionally posts throwback photos from prom with captions about dodging bullets and trusting your instincts. And I'm Maya Chen, fiancée to the most beautiful man in the world, heir to a real estate empire, founder of a nonprofit foundation that provides arts education to underserved communities, and most importantly, someone who finally knows the difference between being loved and being used. Sometimes second chances aren't about fixing what went wrong. Sometimes they're about realizing that what went wrong was actually the first step toward what was always meant to go right. And sometimes the best revenge is simply living well enough that the people who hurt you become irrelevant to your happiness. When Dante's show ends and he changes out of his runway outfit into jeans and a sweater that makes him look less like a god and more like the man I'm going to marry, he finds me backstage and kisses me like we haven't seen each other in months instead of hours. "How was it?" he asks, and I can tell he's genuinely interested in my opinion, not just fishing for compliments. "Perfect," I tell him, and I'm not just talking about the show. Everything is absolutely perfect. And for the first time in either of my lives, I mean it completely.